All right, Coach. Hey, thanks for joining me today on this Simple Coach to Coach interview. Appreciate you taking the time. I have a special place in my heart for Washington Lee because your men's coach was one of my first interviewees and couldn't have been a nicer guest. I have a friend, outstanding goalkeeper, who's going to be attending Washington in the fall. Hence the
Yes.
that.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So let's just jump right into it. So, relatively new coach. I think it was June of last year.
Yeah, June 1 of last year. So just over a year now.
So congratulations on your first 370 days of of your head coaching career at Washington and Lee. Maybe you could just start by talking about your background, sort of how your soccer journey, how you ended up at Washington and Lee.
Yeah, my story is fairly unique. And I could spend hours talking about it, but I started off as a Division I soccer player. And I always like to tell players I did everything wrong. I didn't, the classic stories of didn't find the right place. I looked for all the wrong reasons. And I actually transferred midway through my career to a Division III school. And the plan was to finish out my career, become a high school history teacher, and probably coach on the side. And then when I was at my Division III institution, Wartburg College, the head coach at the time, Jim Conlon, who's now the head coach at WashU in St. Louis, he approached me about becoming his assistant coach. He said, "Hey, go get your master's." So I was an assistant coach, kind of doing the GA thing for 2 years there. And then I had the opportunity to become a full-time coach at Denison University. And then I worked under Gail Murphy. So I love to tell people I've got to work under two of like the most winning Division III coaches in my in my informative years.
Wow.
So I was very lucky. So I went out to Denison for 4 years, was an assistant out there, had a great experience. And then I had the opportunity to come back to Wartburg and be the head coach there, where I was, for almost 12 years. And then a year ago, this opportunity to come out to, WNL was presented to me. And after really kind of digging even in deeper, it was just an opportunity I couldn't pass up. So moved my husband and my kiddos this direction and have really loved every minute since. So it's been quite the journey. It definitely went some different directions that I never thought it would, but it's been awesome.
Yeah. A great school, right? I got this. Just we're already off topic. So the first one I'm going to ask is, were you one of those recruits? And I always ask about this with coaches who in their recruiting process deal with players, but I am curious, were you one of those player recruits that was all about D1 or bust? Or
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes. 100%. So I don't want to age myself on this episode today, but I'm going to. It was 2000 is when I graduated from high school. And so things were really different. But even though I was from Iowa, I played on this really tremendous team. And of my graduating class, all 8 of us, except for one other girl, were going to a scholarship school, D1 or D2. And so there was definitely, looking back now, a pressure and expectation. And that's what I thought I wanted, right? And that's even where I try to educate players. Now, I have teammates who I went to the Division I school with, and they had a great experience. They loved it there. So that's where I always get very passionate. You got to find the right fit for you. And I just didn't take the time to do that. I went to a smaller high school. I was just that classic kid. I was like, I want a big city. I want to go far away. It was all wrong. So I did everything wrong. But I mean, it also helped shape. And, that's where I'm at today is because of my experience.
And now, without getting too much, how long did you stay before you transferred to Wartburg?
Technically 2 years, but my sophomore year in preseason, I broke my leg in a preseason scrimmage.
So you got a red
So
shirt.
I was in the red shirt process. And honestly, I just thought I was going to be done. I just thought my broken ankle was pretty severe. It was the first big injury I ever had in my life. And I just thought I would be done. And then I had friends who were playing Division III, a friend that was playing D3 football. And he was like, you can win here. I had all the stereotypes like,
Yeah.
oh, it's rec, I'm too competitive, you know.
That's that is so you're a first. So because
Yes.
I've never had a I haven't spoken to a coach who went the D1 round, like the classic pitfalls. I don't mean to say that what you're doing was
No.
pitfalls, but the classic pitfalls of, hey, what if you started out at Wartburg and just sort of like, I don't want to say sucked it up, but like the peer pressure. I don't know if that's a thing, but the peer
Yeah.
pressure and be like, I'm just going to Division 3 because I think I'm going to enjoy it more. Like, what
Yes.
would that
Yeah.
experience have been differently, right? Like, you could have been, all I don't know, it could have just been a totally different experience for you. Um,
100%.
so let me ask you now, we're totally down the rabbit hole. And tell me to stop if it's,
No,
you
no,
don't want
this
to
was
talk
great.
about this. What was it? What was it about your Wartburg experience that was different, better than your Division 1 experience? Without, yeah, I'll just leave. I'll
Yeah.
just say soccer wise, right? Like,
Yes. The biggest thing was at that time was the balance. I
mm-hmm,
do think for me, I had poured my heart and soul in being a soccer player. And now as I was becoming a young adult, having the opportunity to do other things besides just soccer.
mm-hmm,
And that also meant just focusing on my education. Like genuinely, my education came first.
mm-hmm,
And, some of those things, it was a real team atmosphere. I also was very competitive, and I love to tell players this. I wish I would have looked a little bit more deeper inside of what I would want out of the team experience, and being below average and things like that just
mm-hmm.
was difficult for
Yeah,
me. I think I would have handled not playing a little bit better and been on a team that was bought into like success
yeah,
than I would have been playing and not having that.
mm-hmm,
So as soon as I moved to Wartburg, they were in this transitional phase of like committing to being successful, like
mm-hmm,
committing to like doing things at a high level. And that got me really excited,
yeah,
even though it was technically less.
yeah.
Like we were, committing less to soccer. There was just this drive for excellence that I wasn't getting at my
Right,
other
right,
institution.
right, right. That's interesting. That's really interesting, right? Because again, you
Yeah.
just all the noise that you hear between Division 1 and Division 3, and I've been saying since I started the channel and before then, to me, there's no difference between the soccer Division 3, Division 1. It's just a different approach. You have teams, probably like yourself, and other teams, and we know them all, that have a drive for excellence that is no different than a Division 1's drive for excellence but they're just like probably right? Like there's a balance that they strike because the academics do come first. So,
Yes.
um, why Washington and Lee? What was it about Washington and Lee? Which sounds like going from Wartburg to. I mean, that's not just like one state over, right? Like or one
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So why Washington
Yes.
and Lee?
Well, I think it's important to note my first year at Denison, which would have been 2007, our very first game of the season was at WNL. We
Ah.
actually came here
Mm-hmm.
for a tournament, and just visiting and seeing Lexington and the campus, I mean, it stayed with me forever. I was
Yeah.
like, this place is amazing.
Yeah.
It's just gorgeous and has this real homey feel to
Mm-hmm.
it. So that is important to know, because I just remember thinking even at that time, like, wow, places like this exist. Like this is amazing. And I had been at two very beautiful
Yeah.
institutions. So after getting through the pandemic, I think a lot of my priorities and kind of vision and things that I wanted to accomplish in my career started to shift a little bit. So to be at an institution where the individuals, the women who are choosing to come here, they're picking WNL first.
Yeah.
And yes, I would love to be that coach to say, hey, they're picking me in our soccer program. And I know it's a close second, but they're genuinely coming
Yeah.
here because of WNL. And that is really hard to pass up. And then, not to mention, right, the education they're going to get. I always told myself, if I'm going to work and do this, I want to be at a place I can really believe in the mission, the values,
Yeah.
that I can feel good about sitting down with parents and young women and being like, hey, I'm going to provide you a great soccer experience, but you're also going to have an amazing experience at this institution. It's
Yeah.
not just going to be soccer.
Yep.
So there was a lot of factors, but and not to mention you can win here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
told you earlier I'm competitive. So to have all those things initially and then be able to know if I invest and do things correctly, we can have a successful
Yeah.
program. It was all very
Yeah. Yeah.
exciting.
And I know Washington and Lee is one of those places where I think institutionally, the support for athletics is a priority, right? Like, not a lot of schools have different priorities, but I know athletics is a big deal to Washington and Lee, which is why I think across the board you have such great teams and at all different, men's, women's, all the different sports. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so I'm going to ask you something that I just started thinking about yesterday in an interview I had, and especially since you come from I'll just say, a totally different region than Washington and Lee.
Hmm.
Do you think there are regional differences between players?
Wow. Yes and no,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think one of the things I've noticed being out here, which isn't necessarily has anything to do with the players, is that there's just more women or girls playing soccer out
Mm-hmm.
here than in my previous region.
Right.
So there was a little bit of, kind of fighting over the same kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking at the highest level. And not that we're not running into Division 1 schools
Right.
here, because believe me, I
You
am.
are.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but there's just a bigger pool of individuals. I do think out here it seems, and I've only been here a year, so I hate to make any generalizations. A lot of the young women we're recruiting, they're pretty focused on soccer. Where in the Midwest, they are more multi-sport
Mm-hmm.
athletes, and there are definitely young women out there that focus just on soccer. But I feel like if I had to kind of pick two different things, that would be it. I do think in general the player has evolved. Like when I think about my first year as a head coach in 2011 compared to where I am now, and this would have been the same in the Midwest, the player itself has evolved.
Mm-hmm.
They're a lot more intelligent. They've seen the game. They come
Very.
in a much better place tactically and technically. A lot of times, we were getting awesome athletes who didn't touch a ball that much or didn't watch the game enough. Now, I still think we have a lot of strides to
Yeah. Yeah.
continue to
Yeah.
make.
Yeah.
That is definitely one of the things that I've seen evolve with time.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting because I've said, I just did a show that I started in talking about the reffing experience that I had at the tournament where someone was wearing a W&L shirt from or sweatshirt or something from a distance. I was like, I gotta email. And I think if you were to say, okay, looking at the women's games compared to the men's game, and just sort of equalize it, right? Like get rid
Mm-hmm.
of the disparities, physical disparities, all that kind of stuff. I think from a soccer perspective, I think the women's game is ahead of the men's game by quite a lot. And I don't know if I think that because there's been this acceleration or this growth in the women's game that seems a lot faster than the men's game. That sort of has gotten a
Mm-hmm.
little static. But that is my latest thing, is that the women's game is tactically and technically, I think, far ahead of the boys, right, in the
Mm-hmm.
ECNL
Yep.
world
Yep.
than I had realized. And that was from watching that weekend, which the talent was outrageous. Like
It
I
was.
and you were competing against Division 1 coaches, right?
Oh,
It was all over the place. Like it was remarkable.
there was, I mean, Anson was there. I
Yeah.
mean, like all the big dogs were
Oh,
there.
I had no idea. I didn't know he was
Yep.
there. Yeah. Well, there was one game I took a picture. I was reffing one of the games on Saturday, and I got up to start the game, and I turned to look down to the bench, and just beyond the bench started chair after chair after chair after chair that wrapped around of coaches. And then as I was doing, I was looking at, you can't help, like, Who's that? Who's that? Who's that? What kind of stupid comment could I make to get some attention from these guys? Because I still fancy myself being, recruitable at 54.
Yeah.
The Division One, Division One, Division One, Division One. All right, and Division Three,
Yeah.
they're 2 and 3, and there was sort of interspersed, but the Division Ones were all out there. It was
Yes.
crazy.
Yes.
But I will say, and as I said before, and I'm kind of rambling, but the amount of talent that was there, every one of those programs can walk away with a player. Doesn't matter the team because there was that much talent. I was so impressed. But so.
Yes. It was a great event.
Yeah. Hey, Helen, you're year one, so you're working this. You've had the season under your belt. Like, how big of a deal is the team culture for you, and sort of what you envision Washington and Lee being like in, I don't know, 3 years down the road, 4 years down the road, as you're sort of cemented into your spot.
Culture is really everything. It's our foundation. It's how we're going to be successful both on and off the field, and that's a lot of the times what I talk about with our group. This first year was really unique. I mean, I moved to Lexington August 1st, and my team reported like August 19th. And yes, I met them via Zoom over the summer, and I was, I'm only the third head coach of the program, and there was a rich tradition here in a really positive way. I wasn't stepping into something that, it's got to be completely rehauled and all that kind of stuff. So I can't explain to people enough that I had been a head coach for 11 years and I built something I was really proud of and had a lot of great success. But, stepping in here, it was like starting all over. I felt like, felt like a Bambi. When we talk about culture, though, and I can get into a lot of details. The one thing we talk about, though, as a group is like it's never finished, right? We're always working on our culture. We're always tending to it. We're always talking about our expectations and values. One of the biggest mistakes I made young in my coaching career was we had an amazing culture, and I did all sorts of activities and things to make sure it was there. And I kept thinking like, the older players will continue to pass this down. But if you're not really intentional about what you do with and they're all unique. So yes, you can have this foundation, but you have to make tweaks every single year to what they need so that your culture stays at an all-time high. And, like, again, this happened in 2013 and it was like one of my, hardest coaching years of my career, but it was the most informative because I never looked back after that. Meaning I really learned that it's not just going through the motions, it's being really intentional and then constantly communicating with the team. Like, we're never done. It's, no matter how, right now we're like, wow, our culture's in a great place. That's great, but we have more work to do. Like, it's always something that we have to tend to. So it's a year-round commitment, not only by the staff, but the players. And then finding the players who want to be a part of our culture. I mean, that was another big transition, right? I come in August. These individuals didn't choose to play for me. And so trying to learn who they were and have them learn who I am. And so we could start to build that trust. And so that was an adjustment as well, is just making sure they understood where I was coming from, the whys, the ins and outs. So it's been a whole year. And I've told my rising leaders, our seniors next year, I said, my hope is when you come back, our current freshmen, I said, when you come back and they're seniors, that you're going to look at us and you're going to be like, it's there. It's all there. I mean, I just know it takes so much time for us to kind of instill. And we've made huge strides this year, but I also want to be intentional. I don't want to rush everything. It has to be done. I want to build it and make it strong.
It is amazing how quick that goes away, right? Like how quickly you could lose that if you aren't intentional, or you bring in the wrong person, which we could talk about, right? Like you bring in the wrong recruit. That's like a hand grenade in a locker room. Like you can't. Hey, and now, is there like Washington and Lee? I always look at Washington and Lee. I say, you have a national recruiting pool, right? Like you can go anywhere in the country and be like, we're Washington and Lee, and sort of get a California kid or whatever. Is that the case? And I think Wartburg is a lot more local, well, regional, right?
Hmm.
Is that
Yes.
is that accurate?
Yes, yes and no, right? So we're also finding that, there's certain pockets where WNL isn't known as well. And as soon as, these kids even just Google, they're like, whoa, like
Yeah.
this is amazing because, our academics are so high, but we're not this huge institution,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's
Yeah.
the UA schools,
Yeah.
there's the Nest, there's
Yeah.
John Hopkins. But so, yes, for sure, we are recruiting coast to coast
Mm-hmm.
and definitely drawing a lot of attention. But I also want to make sure that we're getting ourselves out there. I
Yeah.
want people to know who we are so that we don't miss out on those really great individuals that maybe just haven't heard of us
Mm-hmm.
yet.
Mm-hmm. I will say, like the tournament, like you do, and you mentioned it early, which I thought was really spot on. You do have to do the work. You have to put yourself out there to be seen,
Hmm.
because if you think you're going to phone it in all the time, you're sadly mistaken. I think the kids thrive. There's a certain part of them where it's like, well, you weren't on the sideline for my game, so why should I
Yeah.
listen? Whatever. But
No, absolutely.
all right, so let's talk about the season. Your
Okay.
first. Give me your overall assessment of your 2022 season.
Uh, to be honest, it probably couldn't have gone much better, but at the same time, I was a little disappointed once I know I'm talking out both sides of my mouth. I was with some adults this weekend, and I had a parent that follows us from a different institution, and he
Mhm.
said, "Hey, congratulations on what a great year." And I said, "Yeah, it was fine." He's like, "Did I get it wrong?" He's like, "Did I not do things correctly?" Um, stepping in, as I kind of mentioned earlier, the first time I saw my team play against another team was our first game against Stevens. We didn't even have a scrimmage. There was not one scheduled for us. So we played this very, very good team on day one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was a lot. So I don't think I had my best foot out there. I was still trying to juggle it all. But to come in as late as we did and make it to the NCAA tournament and put ourselves in that position, I couldn't be prouder. And the team was unbelievable. They were just like, okay, tell us what to do and we're going to do it. I mean, they really bought in from day one. So I was really proud of them. You know, I joke, if it was just based on possession, we might have been a Final Four team, but you got to score goals,
It's a game
right?
of, a game of
And so,
goals. It's a game of
yeah, it is.
goals.
So I'm trying to teach my group in a positive way. They're a little perfectionist, but
Mm,
sometimes the game needs to be ugly and we got
yeah,
to, can't wait for the perfect moment. We got to go and get it.
yeah,
So the games we lost this year late in the season, I was just disappointed because I don't think that was like we should have done a little bit
better.
better. But
Yeah,
I loved the group and
yeah,
the fact that they just kind of welcomed us with open arms was amazing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say I would think a lot of coaches would be in similar shoes would welcome the season that you had, and to a T would all be like, yeah, it was good. I just disappointed at you, like, okay, you know. Um, all right, so just for folks watching, you went 14-2-5. You
Yes.
lost in the ODAC semis to Virginia Wesleyan. And my first thought
Hmm.
was, well, you beat them during the regular season aside from the score. What was the
Yeah.
difference between the two games?
Um, that's a wow, that's a great question. I feel like we as a program are working on our ability to believe how good we are
Mm-hmm.
and really kind of putting that energy out there that we're this team. That what I found is the team kept telling me we want to win an ODAC, but what it took what it takes to win an ODAC,
Yeah.
to beat a team like Virginia Wesleyan twice, like what that takes, is a lot of, not just on field stuff, but a lot of mental focus. And so I still think we're kind of working through this hump of, who we can be. And I believed it the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great game. We made some small errors and we didn't score when we had our chances.
Mm-hmm.
And so to lose 2-1, I kept trying to tell them, one goal against a team like that probably isn't ever going to be enough.
Mm-hmm.
I don't expect to have shutouts every game. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think the biggest difference is like Virginia Wesleyan went out and took the game, and we were hoping to, like, get the game. Like,
Yeah,
let's
yeah,
hope we win. Of
yeah.
like, we're going to go out there,
No, you
blue
can't. Yeah,
flag.
yeah. Champions don't think like
So,
that, right? Like general
yes,
terms, they don't think like, "Hey, the game's gonna come to me." They're like hungry
I'm going to go
as
get it.
I'm gonna go get it, come hell or high water. And like you said, not if it can't be perfect, it can be ugly,
Yep.
and I'm perfectly fine with either way, so long as I get the W, right?
Yes. Yes.
I'm always curious about that, especially in the conference terms. I always find interesting, just sort of, hey, you really took care of business the first time around. What happened, right? Like, and
Yep.
just the differences there. This is, you're going to be like, seriously? Did you find anything
Yeah.
particularly challenging this season, aside from being you've been there since August 1st and met the team like physically 2 weeks
Yeah.
later?
Yeah. So, yes, I like to joke with when people were asking me how I was doing. I said I felt like I was at the bottom of a pool trying to get up. And now, like, I'm like just about to the surface, to be honest. Like, I'm working my way. I do think one of the challenges, but was also a draw for me to come out here, is how good the soccer
Yeah.
is. I mean, the ODAC, the conference itself, like, ooh, it's brutal.
Yeah.
But I love that. I
Hmm.
really do. And so some of those challenges of just knowing, like, there's not going to be too many games that you're just going to walk into, and get the W.
Yeah.
And then just learning the different type of student athlete I was working with. They were a little bit different than what I was used to working with. And I know I was different than their previous head coach. So, like I said, just really building those relationships. It
Hmm.
wasn't difficult, but you can't build relationships overnight, and not, at
No.
least not authentic ones,
No. Yeah.
that are deep rooted.
Yeah.
So I, I kept telling my assistant, remind me to be patient because I just wanted
Being,
everything right now.
yeah. Yeah.
And it takes time to do things the right way, and he knew I wanted to do them the right way, so
Hmm.
he kept me in
Yeah.
line.
Yeah. It is ODAC. I'm just looking at your standings, which is why I'm looking up. So I apologize. It
Yes.
wasn't. I mean, it is. It's a brawl. Like that top
Yes.
upper 2/3 is a brawl. Like I could totally see those being, whether if you're on the road during the week, those could get ugly. Not
At
ugly, but
Lynchburg,
yeah, at Lynchburg. Yeah.
we were, and they played fantastic. They
Yeah.
were so good that day.
Yeah.
So,
Totally. Like,
um,
but that's the thinking, right? People look at the standing and be like, "Oh, why can't you do this?" Well, try going to Lynchburg on a Tuesday or a Thursday, whatever the date is, and even on a
mhm,
weekend, try playing there. Try
yep,
that. See how you like it and see how you fare, right? Like it's a,
yep.
yeah, that's tough. That is really tough. I just looked at the your table. Like I know the men's side, but that's really interesting.
Well, and obviously Virginia Wesleyan had a
Oh
great
yeah.
season. Lynchburg NCAA
Yeah.
tournament, we made it.
Yeah.
So, and Roanoke
Yeah.
was very good. I
Yeah.
there Randolph made
Yeah.
again. Shenandoah made a run.
Yeah.
Bridgewater was good. So
Yeah, yeah, and yeah. Anyhow, um, like I said, I thought you would be like, yeah, really challenging. Come on. All right. So you had actually, like I mentioned, 14-2 and 5-5 ties.
mhm.
Games. The I don't know what was the fifth one, but I didn't write it down. Franklin and Marshall, Stevens, Mary Washington, and Lynchburg. I missed one. Um, Yeah, and obviously you were at Wartburg. So my thoughts are: would you have wanted to go to overtime on those games? And do you
Um,
like not going to overtime?
well, jokes. Well, it's kind of in some of those games I was pleasantly happy with the tie and ready to leave as soon as
Yeah, at least you're honest, right? Like, oh, I
yeah,
wanted to
yeah,
go after, and like, no, no,
yeah.
I'm
And
okay.
then there was there was, a game or two that I would have welcomed the opportunity to continue to play
Mm-hmm.
regardless, to
Mm-hmm.
be honest. So, it's such an interesting change because all of us, even as I dated myself a little bit ago,
Mm-hmm.
this is all we know is overtime,
Yeah.
right? So just learning new strategies as a head coach, I just don't, I don't know. I would be hard pressed to hear another head coach say like, "Oh, I know exactly how to approach this new
Yeah.
setup," because this is all we know.
Yeah.
So yes, and do I still have some concerns about once we make a conference tournament or NCAA
Yeah.
tournament, and these women aren't prepared, and there's no other way to prepare them? Absolutely. So it's kind of, it's just been interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of these people, I don't like to react super quickly till I can learn it and
Mm-hmm.
experience it. So we've had 1 year. I don't think it's enough time,
Mm-hmm.
but I also saw, some of the negative effects of
Yeah.
it as well.
Yeah. I just think I go back and forth every day. Like, yeah, that's a good thing. Who needs the overtimes? And then I'm like, my soccer memories go back to overtime games, the heartbreaks, and it's like you won the World Cup. Like it just, you
Yes.
just don't, you can't not the emotional part of it. There is nothing quite like it. I mean, obviously make the tournaments and they do it there, but even regular season, it becomes like this can become fuel for right an upward trend. It
Yeah.
could be a make or break either way, right?
Mhm.
And so,
Yeah. Yes.
all right. So now your first spring. What have you? What was your spring like? What were you trying to accomplish, if you can share? Just
Yeah.
in terms of as being the new kid on the block.
So some things this spring we wanted to focus on was number one, our culture.
Mm-hmm.
Still kind of still instilling our expectations, what we value, and how we plan to play moving forward. Some of those things that won't change regardless of talent, and things like that. At you know, at times I'm very okay with saying this. I'm a real like feeler, like I feel the moment, but I also know stats are helpful. So we go over the stats with the players. And here's how we gave up goals this year. And we didn't give up much, but when we did, it was on set pieces. So, and somebody might say like, you're going to put that out on a podcast. I'm okay with it because man, we worked on that a lot. So
Yeah,
we scored off set pieces, which in the women's game is such an advantage
advantage.
when
Oh,
you.
totally.
So I was really proud of the group. Like they bought in and we did I would say a good job. Like I still think we have some growth, but we did good with it. So, some of those kind of, and set pieces is one of them. And then trying to instill some of this fearless ugliness and, in the box and putting them into scenarios so that we can possess, we can keep the ball, which is really important. But then once we get in and around the box, what that can look like and what it feels like when it's not exactly perfect. I want to score perfect goals, but I also know in order for us to be really successful, we're have to get some other, you know, kind of situations where we're putting the ball in the back of the net.
Mm-hmm.
But our main focus was continuing to come together as a group and continuing to teach the team who I am, because again at times, and I'll tell anyone who will ask, I felt like a guest coach this fall. Like I felt like somebody was like, hey, we need your help, can you come
Can
on
you come on in for a semester?
yeah, the team is all set and here you go. I inherited a very good team that was really well put together. So to make that transition to become who we are now under my leadership, we were still very much in that.
Mm-hmm.
So the spring went great.
Yeah.
And I got to work with players more individually, which I just love to do. And that time escapes us in the fall. It
Mm-hmm.
just does once you get into the grind of things. So those were our main focus throughout this whole spring season.
All right. So, do you differentiate set pieces from corner kicks? And
Oh, I lumped
you
together.
lump them all together. Okay. So, I'm going to ask you. This is my
Yes.
my other crazy. I have a lot of crazy theories that have no foundation in reality other than my own impressions of things. So,
Okay, perfect.
it's great because then I'm always right to myself. So I'm never wrong.
Yep.
I have this thought that all things being equal, teams being equal, corner kicks don't matter as goal scoring opportunities. And
Okay.
so I'm just wondering your thoughts on corner kicks.
Well,
You
we
you
did
can
lose to Alba
what
2-1, and both were corner kicks they scored on us. So
I'm going to edit this part out. Like I'm just like it's done. I don't want to know facts about your experiences about corner kicks. I want you to validate my opinion about corner kicks.
uh,
That's awesome. That's hysterical. I totally walked into that one. I should have known. I should
yeah,
have done my research a little bit deeper. um,
well,
uh,
that's awesome.
all right, guest coach. Hey, like how like that's interesting that you say guest coach because I well, go ahead.
I was gonna say though, like in all seriousness, the build up to what gave up those corner kicks were still more of a concern for me than the actual corner kick.
That I can buy into. That we're in
So
agreement. So I won't edit this out. But to
yeah,
that I'm totally with you because I think corner kicks can be dangerous, but I don't think teams differentiate themselves well enough on corner kicks. I guess is what I'd
yes,
say. Is that
yeah.
you're right. So
So yes, I still had a bigger issue with what caused the
the
corner
corner
kick
kick,
to become a corner
corner
kick.
kick.
Yes,
Okay. All right,
yes.
we're back on track. Me and you, we're
Okay.
back on. You, it's interesting that you say guest coach because not a lot, no one's ever used that sort of feel. It's just a feeling, and I'm not saying that you are,
Yeah.
obviously not. But does that sort of translate into the recruiting process for you? Like you're just, I don't know, not a guest, but like you're so new. Like how am I supposed to recruit at this school? I don't. Not that you don't know anything about the school, but I don't know anything about the school. I don't know the kid. Like, how did that feel, or how's that go?
Yeah. So definitely with the 2023 class, it, that was a real reality. We had to, come in, and there was a gap between when I took over between before the previous head coach. So, there was some piecing together very quickly, but what I found was just being honest with the prospects.
Mm-hmm.
Here is who I am, here's what we plan to achieve, here's why I chose W&L, and just being more authentic. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the reality was I was a new coach. There was
Mm-hmm.
lots of things that I didn't quite know yet
Mm-hmm.
about just even institutionally
Yeah.
how things function.
Function. Yeah.
And I just find the more honest you are, even the parents through the process were so understanding.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, okay, like this makes sense. You're getting into things. But as long as they knew, what my expectations, what the values were going to be of the program and the values of Washington and Lee, which, I spent all summer making sure I was ready to go to step onto campus, but you can't know everything until you work there.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, it's been challenging, but at the same time, I feel like my assistant and I have been really committed to making sure that we we have learned as quickly as possible so that we
Yeah.
can share the
Yeah. Yeah.
information.
You know, it's amazing what honesty can do for you. Right? Like,
Yeah.
it's amazing. At some point, right? Better have somebody make a decision that you don't like, but you're being honest with them, then
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And most people
Mm-hmm.
are understanding of that, right?
Yeah.
So what does your recruiting class look like for the 2023s? And are you done? Are you still looking? Obviously, you were up 2 weeks ago. Jeez, time flies when we're having fun,
I
right?
know, right?
2 weeks ago in Jersey, but yeah, what does it look like?
So we're done with the 2023 class, and with how our admissions process works, we're done unless, there's somebody who's already been admitted here that somehow fell through the cracks that
Mm-hmm.
would come out of the woodworks. But yeah, we're overall done. Honestly, it went way better than I ever thought coming in as late as I
Uh
did. I
huh.
kind of, you know, um, I just didn't know how it was going to all come together because our admissions process is really different.
Mm-hmm.
And, there were on a timeline, and, early decision was November 1st. And
Mm-hmm.
so to get these relationships, get to know players, not only as, how they could help us on the field, but who they were as people.
Mm-hmm.
It all was so rapid fire,
Mm-hmm.
but it came together way better than I ever
Mm-hmm.
dreamed of for the 2023 class. And so now we're really working on the 2024
Yeah.
class, but I even feel a little bit behind with that class because my focus has had to be on a little bit on that
Yeah.
2023 class, but it's coming together and we're finding our groove and our niche and, having ID camps, getting out to as many events as we can,
Hmm.
because we know how important this process is going to be for us moving forward. It's,
Hmm.
that's another, it's like culture. It never
Never
stops and you
stop.
have
Yeah. Yeah.
constantly commit to it. But I appreciate the opportunity to really build relationships with
Hmm.
prospects and their families. And that was tough with the 2023 class, and we're
Hmm.
working on it and it's gone well, but I'm looking forward to like a normal recruiting
Recruiting
cycle.
cycle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what? That normal recruiting cycle you think is going to be 2025?
Yep. Very
Yeah.
soon here.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
little crazy start to
So you'll be at the
exactly.
start, like you'll be literally day one of the looking at 2025. So that's what you mean by a full recruiting cycle for
Yeah, I
yourself. Yeah.
think the 2025s will be the first class that will get a full recruiting
Cycle
cycle
in.
with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, where we have a lot of time to
Yeah.
evaluate, uh, go discover players,
Yeah.
and obviously have players reach out to us and
Mm-hmm.
build those relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So,
All right.
yes.
Um, and then the last one for you, and then I'll let you get on with your day. Um, for the fall, what sort of goals do you have now in mind that you could share and not be on somebody's motivation board? As you know, having said something like, we got to get those generals.
Honestly, it's just finishing laying the foundation. I've looked at this year as teaching and kind of starting to lay it down, but like just solidifying this is who we are.
Hmm.
We play a really hard schedule next year. My time in the Midwest and under Gail Murphy, I learned how vital it is to play a hard schedule and how hard the ODAC is. I can't guarantee we're going to win it every year. I'd love to say we're going to win it every year, but I also know there's a lot of great teams.
Hmm.
So I'm setting up a schedule that's really difficult and challenging because I also want to teach our players how to play at that high level day in and day out.
Yeah,
And so there's going to be some learning with that because it's not going to be easy. And some people might think I'm a little crazy
you're
for my
nuts.
schedule, but that's
You're nuts. I'm looking at it right now. I'm sorry again, looking up. Like
it's okay.
you're. I mean, that's a tough. That is. I don't know Southern Virginia, so I don't know. But you go Stevens, Puget Sound. Who's in
Yeah.
Mechanicsburg that you're playing in a tournament? Is that Messiah? No.
Messiah, we're going up there. Yep.
Ooh, I might have to sneak my way there for that weekend.
Yes.
Then and
And
then you could all sing happy birthday to me because my birthday is the 3rd.
oh,
Um,
that's amazing.
so yeah, I'll show up and be like, "Sing happy birthday." You'll be like, "What? Who is this crazy guy?" And then wait, your other non-conference, like, yeah, here's an easy match for you. Let's play Christopher Newport the 1st of October.
Yeah. Right after we play Randolph Macon, too.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
like,
but that's a conference game, so that's hey, let's just
yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so can I ask you? Like
Hmm.
with the schedule, obviously you're intentional to it, but are you sort of doing what a lot of folks do, especially I want to say at the I don't want to say I don't mean this in a bad way, like the level that you're at, right? Are you intentionally
Hmm.
working the schedule so that you have two avenues to get to the tournament? It's either we either win conference or we're going to have such a schedule that there can't overlook us for an at large, assuming all that it goes well, right? Like,
Yeah. I mean, right. There's always that balance. You can make a really hard schedule and not win any of those
right,
games. It
right,
doesn't really matter.
matter, yeah,
It's also for me developing relationships with the coaches out here.
uh
I
huh,
have great relationships down the Midwest. I played the best teams out there all the time, even
yeah,
if they beat me. And so I want to start building those relationships
mm-hmm.
with the coaches because once you find that, then it really allows itself to
Yeah,
be like a fun competition
yeah,
in that non-conference schedule. And I need the team to see the highest level and
yeah,
experience it, like I said, day in
and
and
day
day
out,
out
yeah,
so that they can grow as players. So, you know, of course, I would love for us to achieve many things, but at the end of the day, I just want us to continue to learn how we're going to function, grow, and be the best possible team at the end, whatever that looks like.
yeah, yeah.
And again, I hate losing. So
Yeah.
I tread lightly here, but for this next year, it can't be all about wins and losses.
Yeah.
It has to be about, are we creating the environment for long term that is going to help us sustain
Yeah.
success? And hey, we get a bunch of success this fall, that would be awesome too. But I am more focused on, are we coming together, laying the foundation, and learning how we're going to move forward? And if we're doing that, it's going to be a great year.
Yeah. I will say, just on your schedule, like that's sort of, and we were talking earlier about the mentality of your team. I don't know if that's the way to say it, but the mentality of your team, the ability to win ugly, to right, those games where you needed to win ugly, but they just didn't have that component, like that championship mindset. That this is a schedule that builds that, because the Christopher Newport, right? Like you have to go in,
Yeah.
and if you're going to win, this isn't about like, hey, they're not going to give it to you. They're
Yeah.
totally not going to give you the game, and you're going to have to go
Yes.
after it. And
Yes.
right? Like, in again, just sort of your overall schedule, you have to go after those games. Your first
Yeah.
game against Stevens, if
Yes.
you
They were
sit,
so good.
yeah, if you sit back, they're gonna pop three on you before you even know
Yep.
it, and or just
Yep.
sort of don't have the ambition for the game. I mean that
Yep.
respectfully, but they're gonna pop three
Yep.
on you, and like that, they're that
Yeah.
good. So
Well, and also just learning the, the idea of really respecting your opponent
yeah,
and not fearing,
yes,
and
yes,
putting your team into those environments
yeah,
that we might play some teams that are a little bit better than us,
yeah,
and that's okay.
yeah.
Like that's okay. And so I'm excited about it. I'm really looking forward to the season and working with the group.
That's fantastic. And seriously, that looks like a great weekend. Like a great
Yeah,
weekend
I
of soccer, aside from my birthday, which the world should celebrate.
mean,
That looks like a great soccer weekend. Like it really does. Like I'm thinking now, because it's 2 hours for me. So,
that's awesome.
all right. Before I keep rambling about stuff, Coach, thank you very much. This was awesome. Hey, I wish you and your ladies and your staff all the success in the world. Like I think your thoughts about how you want to approach this, and it's just, I mean, you're definitely you're going to be a program to reckon with, right? Like those D1s got nothing on you guys, right? Like, so.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me. I love talking soccer, so this is awesome.
Yeah, me too. So, all right, Coach, thank you very much. If you like this show, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. You can also find me on anti-social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks. This is a message from my Chief Marketing Officer. I think this keeps him happy.